What are you and your staff? What are you allowed to do right now with the student athletes?
But the medical side of things is a little bit different than the coaching side, right? So I think we have a little bit more leeway to be able to reach out. Our goal is just to check in and make sure people are doing well, that they have everything that they need, that their families are well. We're meeting them kind of where they are mentally and physically. The coaches obviously have restrictions from the NCAA. They can call as much as they need to when it comes to this type of contact as well. But when it's coaching and what are you doing in terms of drills, how your workouts going, those types of conversations are limited. They're
Right.
limited by guidance by the NCAA and the SEC. But from a medical standpoint, each of our athletic trainers has a number of student athletes. Some have 15, some have 60 to 100, and their goal is to really maintain that rapport and the communications that they would have with their student athletes on any given day. And we think that's important because that's gives them the same kind of connectedness that they need to have Baton Rouge and LSU to keep them kind of moving forward.
How have you been able to do that? I mean, like in a literal sense. I mean, are you calling, texting, FaceTiming? I mean, how are you doing that
Yeah.
right now?
So for the thing that I decided to do in the role, more of an administrative role at this point, I'm sending out this Healthy Tiger newsletter. So the newsletter is reaching basically all the student athletes, all the professional staff, all the supporting staff, and CAF and academics. And basically, it's the newsletter that hits on a whole bunch of different areas and ideas. I have a FAQ section that I'm actually either using people's real questions that they have or creating questions that I suspect they may have but aren't necessarily asking them. And then sections that engage them on their knowledge base about COVID and everything that has gone on from mental health and dangers of isolation and all that kind of stuff. So it started off for the first 2 weeks, which felt like it was a month, but it
Yeah.
was only like essentially 14 days, every day a newsletter because the information was coming out so rapidly that if you didn't really follow up the next day with more information, then what you had just sent out the day before was actually not even accurate anymore.
Yeah.
So we started off the first 2 weeks with dailies, and going into this week, we started doing them twice a week. So Tuesdays and Fridays, I'm basically sending information out. So they're getting that type of communication that they can kind of count on. It comes in an email form. It has a personalized email message on the front end, and then newsletters attached. So I've gotten really good feedback on that, and I think for me, there's no one that's going to argue who's reading the messages. It's more about my own catharsis and put into it, not necessarily what they're thinking, but I've always gone on the assumption that how I'm probably feeling is probably similar to how other people are feeling. So
Yeah.
I don't want to just paint a rosy picture of everything, that's going great, because it would be disheartening for people who are not feeling that same way to think that there's something wrong in their life at this moment.
Shelly, you mentioned
So that's how I'm getting my stuff out there.
Mm. You mentioned you're publishing
Go ahead.
FAQs. What's the most common question or questions that you're getting right now from athletes?
Well, it's been in phases. So at the beginning, it was, are we going to play a spring football game? Are we going to be able to come back for our season? And then, within usually about 2 or 3 days, those questions were answered. And I would say they were answered partially, right? Because there was always just another layer to the question. So if we're not going to come back until, it was April 15th, does that mean we still can play our spring game? Well, then 2 days later, that message will come out from the conference that the spring games are off. So it's just been literally every day, it's been another set of questions. It's been the easiest newsletter to write because there's so much information that's out there that they need to hear and that staff need to hear and that the academics folks want to get out, that it's a regular flow. I mean, I feel like it's a daily newspaper. Like, it's not hard to put together a daily newspaper because there's stuff going on all the time.
You're also the athletic department's nutritional consultant. So as far as nutrition goes, that's obviously a huge concern, right? When you have like college kids that are like fending for themselves nutritionally,
Right.
when they don't have the nutrition center right there. What is that like right now?
I think that that's a big struggle for all student athletes across the country. I think that this has been a time more than any other time where I have felt like the disparity between race and class has become obvious, and I don't really want to necessarily get into that type of conversation, but
No,
this
I
is a
understand.
very pivotal time for people who, don't have a parent who can stay home. I mean, I know I'm very conscious of who's providing food for us and who's working at, the convenience stores. These are the people that have student athletes as children potentially who are now fending for themselves. And if those people have lost their jobs, there is no income coming in. And the scholarships that they get, it's been a godsend for sure, because they're not, those were not cut, so they're still receiving that. But those scholarships aren't meant to necessarily take care of an entire family back home, because they still have rent that they have to pay up here.
Mm.
So it's been difficult, but we did actually just get word in the last few days that we can actually provide some nourishment to certain student athletes that have need, based on our medical call within the athletic training department. And so that's good. So if we have someone who is just dropping 5-10 pounds, can't keep food on because there's no food to be had, then we can use some of the stuff that we have in terms of the supplements and the snack bars and that sort of thing.
Wait, so I'm sorry to interrupt. So you are allowed then to supplement those student athletes with meals? How does that happen? I mean, that obviously can't come to campus. So what happens?
Right. So we actually do have. There's very few people left on campus, but we do have student athletes that couldn't go home, which is a whole other group of people. So whether they're international or I've learned, not necessarily within athletics, but I've learned that obviously if someone is in a dormitory here in college and they've paid their way here, it's very possible they're homeless if they don't have this home. So it's important to kind of keep that in perspective too, that you have a lot of students on campus that are here because there is not a home. So having said that, we do have a very limited food offering for the student athletes that are here. So we're still, our chefs and the support staff are in there following all the protocols that we can possibly put in to, protect us against the spread of any kind of virus. But you're obviously asking about the kids that are home, that are in North and South Louisiana, and in Ohio and California. Right. What do we do for those kids? Our registered dietitians actually each have a team as well. So they are reaching out to those student athletes separate from the coaches, separate from the academics, and they're engaging with them in conversations as well as what do they need? How can they change their intake right now based on the fact that they may be getting less exercise or a different type of exercise. So there's a lot of that going on where there's constant communication. But when it comes to the actual food, they may need to know now how to eat at a convenience store. If that's all they've got in their small town, then they're going to want to have these registered dietitians say, look, I know it's difficult, but they do have chicken. Perhaps you take, if it's fried chicken, maybe a couple times a week, take the skin off the fried chicken and just eat the chicken. Like just giving them some really basic things that are, that they can probably manage where they are, depending on what the food before them is. But it's difficult because these times are not. They're not really made for for elite athletes. It just takes a lot of creativity and a lot of willingness on everyone's part to contribute to try to keep them going, because it's been difficult.
Shelly Mullenix is with us here just for a couple more minutes. I want to go back. You said that did I understand that some student athletes were allowed to remain on campus?
They are. There are very few. They had to have
got it.
Rationale for that. So yes, we do have few.
I just didn't want to misunderstand that. And you may not know the answer. It's fine. Do you know how many? Just like a ballpark of what that number is? If the answer is no, that's fine. I'm just curious.
Yeah, the ballpark, which is all I could probably give you, is going to be somewhere in the area of maybe 20 to 30 that are on campus.
Okay. What? Two more things, and I'll try to go quickly. I don't want to take up much more of your time. You also mentioned early the mental health aspect of everything that's transpiring. From what you've been able to tell, again, it's been 3 weeks, but it feels like it's been 3 years for many. How is that? How has that part of this conversation gone for a lot of student athletes, both locally and scattered around the country?
Right. Well, I would say the best part about that particular scenario was that we had such a strong mental health group before this all happened. And we had so many of our student athletes that were already engaged in those one-on-one and team meetings. So the rapport was already there between the three to four counselors that we have with each of those teams as well. So the coaches are actually having some of those counselors Zoom into their meetings as well and engaging them in a team discussion on mental health. Usually what happens from those team talks is there are one-offs, right? So if someone is struggling, they might reach out to one of the counselors afterwards and ask if they can have a one-on-one meeting. So the counselors have already been set up from the very first day on the Zoom platform and other platforms that allow them to be able to do telemedicine in a safe space, in a confidential area, that sort of thing. So they really have gone uninterrupted, which has been just a wonderful thing. I can't say enough about the importance of mental health right now in general, but because we had such a strong program to start with, it really has just been a seamless direction in terms of having them come into these team meetings. This is something they've already done before.
That's fantastic to hear. And I think everyone can relate, just understand that as many adults are dealing with mental health amid this shutdown, if it's losing a job or stress.
Yeah.
I mean, kids aren't immune to that either. So before you go, Shelly, is there anything else that you feel it's important that fans need to know about what's happening through all of this that we haven't covered?
I mean, it's kind of a general statement, but I mean, I think everyone needs to give everyone else a break. This was kind of the theme of my newsletter yesterday was, that in our culture here, perfectionism is almost required. I mean, you really need to be on your game. You need to be able to do things, 100% if you're going to beat an opponent. And I think that on some days, you run out of juice, you run out of stamina, you run out of energy, and that is 100% normal. It should be expected. I think parents and people that are home right now are being pulled in so many different directions, and it's so easy to get frustrated so quickly. The rates of domestic violence have gone up. The rates of substance abuse have gone up. And these are all direct results of the pressures that I think all of us have on ourselves, whether it's from losing the job or trying to maintain your job while you're also home schooling your children. Yeah. And that message is for everybody, for all fans, is to give yourself a break. Take a deep breath. Give yourself a break. You're not going to be perfect during this time. And good's going to have to be good enough. And I think if everyone around you can understand that that's where you are and that's where they probably should be too, then we'll get through this. But I try to give everyone the benefit of the doubt right now. I will give everyone a pass. I will still hold them accountable. I will still do my normal Mama Shelly stuff, but I understand where people are in their heads right now, and everyone needs to give each other a break.
I'm very, very glad that we did this, and I'm very grateful for you for taking the time. Best to you and your family through all this, and we'll visit again soon, okay?
Okay, sounds good. You too, Matt.